Today, I'd like to talk to you about quite an amazing document. It's actually an appendix to another document, but it's more than worth discussing in its own right, and it could get you on the path to a highly mature earned value management system. And that's whether you're establishing one for the first time, maintaining one, or freshening one up. And although this is a document published by the Department of Energy Project Management, Project Controls, and Policy Division, I'd say it's applicable to anyone establishing or working within an earned value management system. The document is called Compliance Assessment Governance, the CAG, version 2.0, and it is Appendix A to the Office of Project Management Earned Value Management System Compliance Review Standard Operating Procedure, known as the ESRSOP. On the surface, the CAG may initially appear to be one of many earned value compliance-minded documents detailing the 32 guidelines and the EIA 748 ANSI standard for EVMS. And there would be nothing wrong with that if that's what it did. But for my own work, leaning on the CAG as a reference, I found it to be much more than I expected and more than many people may realize. That's exactly why I want to highlight it today and talk about what it delivers to all of us. From the preface on forward, I can tell you that this document is written in plain English, and its intent is clearly stated up front. It's here to provide precise information and guidance on the necessary actions required of both government and industry for the effective implementation of an IPM strategy using a compliant EVMS. When I read that for the first time, that told me that this document doesn't exist to help me find out where I'm doing things wrong with EVMS. It's here to help me do things right by showing me the characteristics of EVMS process excellence. There's always room for contractors to implement how they choose, as long as they meet the guidelines and their intent. However, the DOE, alongside Arizona State University, have worked towards understanding the environmental, people, practice, and resource maturity that goes into operating a successful EVMS. This is more than a contractor having a system description in a binder that technically complies with the ANSI standard. The CAG deals in the complete picture of establishing and conducting real operations with an EVMS, with the templates and scorecards included in the document, as well as the what and why behind each of the recommended practices. Is that ambitious? It sure is, and it's quite different than many of the documents I've seen in the past. Now that said, let's look at the references section. These are some of my all-time favorite planning and analysis documents here on the screen, called out in the CAG. And there's two of my favorites, my most favorites, the GAO Schedule Assessment Guide and the GAO Cost Estimating and Assessment Guide. The DOE is by no means locking their contractors into a new set of guidance contradicting others. Rather, DOE has assembled and discussed information all in one place from some of the most important documents previously published. Looking further in, we're seeing cultural and people factors. This is not your standard compliance document. This is something that goes more in depth and is crossing or at least walking on the line between compliance and candid discussion of what high EVMS process maturity looks like. I have no problem at all with either approach, and why I first became curious about the CAG is that it appears to do both and does each very well. With the IP2M meter integration, that's the ASU study I referred to earlier, the CAG even shows you level 5, best in class, for each sub-process and attribute. This is beyond level 4, which is the level that you're generally meeting the ANSI standard for EVMS. There would be no harm or foul if the document stopped at that 4th level. Compliance is compliance. But I love that they've included level 5 to show you what to aim for if your organization's goal is a true legacy of EVMS excellence. That's not only a good feeling to strive for level 5, but it means your organization is serving your own interests and those of your client with your best foot forward. Now, not long into the document, you're into the sub-processes supporting each of the 32 EVM guidelines and the associated maturity templates. Each has level 4 highlighted as the target for compliance, but the other levels are all there. the lower levels to benchmark where you may be today for that particular process. Level 4, again, highlighted as the target, and in each case, also level 5, so you know what wild success looks like when you see it. Beneath each table, there's further text discussing best practices for each process. There's plenty of original wisdom in here and much drawn from the documents referenced. And I haven't even mentioned yet, this is free to download. And I'll put the link in the description of this video. I do want to be careful to say that government agencies generally aren't in the business of giving advice or telling contractors how their processes should be architected. However, by borrowing generously from the ASU study, DOE is willing to show you what effectiveness looks like so that contractors can make their own judgments, understanding that the statements in the document are accepted EVMS practices and pulled from peer-reviewed sources. In short, if your EVMS looks like the way level 4 or 5 are described in the CAG, you're going to be successful with EVMS. Let's dig in on one specific example, real quick. I've chosen attribute G1, controlling management reserve and undistributed budget. Having, managing, and controlling these is a part of nearly any EV contract. Level 1, it's easy to assess. It means you have not incorporated MR or UB into your process, which means you're non-compliant. If that's where you are, there's no worry. The steps towards compliance and excellence are here to the right. Level 2 means that you have MR and UB. They're not logged, they're being used for the wrong reasons, and scope is not tied to UB, and a process to distribute UB does not yet exist. Level 3, though, gets better. You have logs for MR and UB, but the logs may or may not reconcile to individual baseline changes that involve the use of MR and UB. They may sometimes be applied for the wrong purposes, such as covering overruns, and in general, UB is cleared out into distributed budget in a timely fashion, most of the time. Level 4, compliance with the ANSI standard. You've got the logs. You're using MR as liens against risk and for potential mitigation. New contractual scope is not budgeted with MR. UB does have clear scope and is appropriately distributed to the PMB timely and effectively. Finally, MR and UB are integrated fully into your analysis and reporting. But wait, there's more. Level 5 goes further than simple compliance, bringing automated checks to assess the health and integrity of the management of UB and MR. When the automated tests fail, the issues and process are corrected. MR changes go through a formal change control board. UB traces to the correct budget and scope all of the time. Basically, at level 5, everything is under continuous review, preferably automated, and optimized based on that review process. And remember, this is just one of the sub-process checks, but the CAG has all of them. So you can benchmark any aspect of your EVMS while always learning what the next level up looks like. The attachments at the end of the CAG should not be ignored either. There's a DOE gold card, always handy for all those terms and formulas. Then there's a crosswalk of the attributes in the document to the EIA 748 EVMS guidelines and a tracing of attributes to subprocesses. Will I reference these last bits daily? No. But I'm glad to have them for reference when using the CAG without having to look elsewhere. To wrap it up, if you're doing EVMS or approaching it for the first time, whether or not it's for DOE contracts, the DOE PM30 division has done a fantastic job of getting everything in one place. Not just a summary of the guidelines, but rather an entire framework for effective EVMS, both from a compliance and process performance standpoint. I'd love it if you left a comment down below about the documents that have helped you establish and operate a successful EVMS. Was it the CAG or something else? Or, for those who do have experience with the CAG itself, tell me whether you like it, whether it's helpful, and if you do feel that some other things that maybe aren't addressed should be discussed and added within it. Let me know. Check that link in the description and keep us updated as you develop your EVMS and begin to assess it.